Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Didi, it's your favorite time of day.
I hate mornings.
We're recording in a much earlier hour than a regular time of recording.
Anything that happens before noon is never good. Nothing good happens before noon. Nothing.
I disagree. I'm a morning person. Everything good happens in the morning.
Yeah, like you get to be up, I get to sleep, and everything is awesome. This is how we stayed married for so long.
That's
the
true.
Separation of duties.
We only meet here.
Yes, because there's like in the Tom Brady roast, there was a part where Gronk goes on stage and says, "You know, Bill, you know, Tom, you're so much alike. You both hate fun." and Lital falls into the hate fun category.
I'm okay being in Camp Brady of hating fun,
yeah,
but
and going to sleep
winning.
at 8. And going to sleep at 8.
And
yes.
winning.
And winning.
I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that.
How was your week?
My week was, I think I got like 2-3 strokes.
Strokes?
Strokes. Like high blood pressure, got a massive stroke. The combination of the game that I took Omri, I went to the Bruins game.
You lost? They lost.
They lost on Sunday, and then I took it, and then we saw the game on Tuesday. Both of them were basically nail-biting, stroke-giving games. And a buddy of mine texted me and says, when they said that the Stanley Cup is the hardest cup to win in sports, they didn't mean the fans. And because I have a good friend that is watching the Rangers series as the Rangers shit their pants, and the Bruins have theirs, and the Canucks are Canucking. So everybody's enjoying this and getting strokes equally, I think. So very hard on us. Very, very hard on us. But at least the Bruins are still alive as we are recording this. Hopefully next week they'll still be alive. And let's hope for the best.
Awesome. Well, I'm back from 3 consecutive weeks of travel. I was in New York, then RSA Conference, San Fran. Now, this week, I was in New York again. That's tough. I don't like traveling. I like my routine. I like stay and get home, but that's life. Well, it was fun meeting with so many people at RSA, but I don't like this conference. I need to say it again. I don't think I have anything to add.
We've beat the RSA conference and us not liking it.
Yeah, I think if anyone wants to know how RSA was this year, go back to last year's RSA summary. It's pretty much the same. No. Alumni network of everyone we worked with in the past. And this year, customers didn't come unless they are in the Bay Area. Nobody flies to San Francisco. Nobody is happy to come to San Francisco unless you have to, or unless you're local there. Customers that we met with were local customers.
I met with global customers, but it's an interesting thing because this is customers that it was more of executive to executive versus the decision maker on the floor. But I do disagree with you. One thing about RSA this year is that AI showed up a lot less than I expected. I expected AI drinks, AI snacks, AI everything, but
AI drinks.
Yes, the drink that gives you AI. I expected the AI to be everywhere, but I think it actually in the hype cycle, which we need to have an episode on the hype cycle. It's on the decline. I actually saw identity being present a lot more than it has been in many, 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 many years.
That's good.
I think the show floor was interesting. It also showed the fact that everybody's consolidating because all the things in the surrounding where all the little startups are usually, they were all big startups, big companies there. And when you talk to them, they said, yeah, we were a startup, we got a booth, we got acquired, now we're putting the main company's brand. like with Collide being bought by 1Password and a few others that got bought. But there was a lot of big name companies in the startup region because it's companies that got acquired. So,
well, we have a topic today.
we have an awesome topic to give.
CISA came up with a great write-up. Highly recommend. We'll put it in the show notes, the link to it. Target Reach Cyber Budget Pool. About those organizations that high targets for attacks, either by nation state or by ransomware gangs, because very rich in a lot of PII, personal data, or if you just shut them down, they'll pay the ransom because it's very disruptive to daily life. Nonprofits, schools, municipalities, state organizations, those that are critical to day-to-day lives, but at the same time have no cybersecurity budget, have very little cybersecurity capabilities and awareness, have a lot of users, and some of them are learning the ABC.
Yep.
And so let's start, Didi, with like overall, what do you think about this move that CISA is putting those guidelines, and we'll go over what's the guidelines and what we think about them.
Okay. So first, I think it's important to have those guidelines.
That's what the government should actually do.
Exactly. And
Protect those that
yes.
are hard to protect.
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you an example.
The vulnerable.
When we were talking in our company about AI, for example, when people were asked about what they fear the most, they said the fear the most is regulation, that the regulator will come and completely destroy the space. And sometimes when the government actually comes up with good regulations, it gives a lot of us in security hope. So this was
Especially when it's not regulation, but good guidelines.
yes, yes. And this is the second one. If you remember, there was another CISA.
CISA is doing great job.
Yes.
Kudos to them.
Yes, because we already discussed another one of them that we're discussing stronger factors, doing things like that.
Yep.
The attack factors of specific groups and how to defend against, which was perfect guidelines because it said monitor A, monitor B, monitor C, monitor D. And if you monitor all those things, you're very likely to be able to defend against some of these attacks. This case was also very, very good because it defined the population really well, at least from my perspective. And one of the things that was really interesting is that it's organizations that employee and customer are very intermixed. It's a very SIAM related environment. Municipalities, schools, all these things, they don't really have employees. Most of their world is SIAM.
It's both customers.
It's hard
Customers,
to
users.
It's hard to delineate. So, for example, if you look at a university has three populations. It has
Administrators.
it has the actual staff. It has the
Research.
they have faculty.
Faculty.
They have faculty.
Then they have research, and then they have students.
No. They have
There are
faculty.
four.
They have faculty. Faculty and research are basically the same thing.
Okay.
Because they're all this intermix of people that are both students and not students, and you can't actually enforce a policy on them, but they have access to tons of data.
And they create unique data.
And they
That's-
create data.
Some of it is IP.
Yeah, so that kind of triumvirate of populations, if you look at all those customers that all these populations that we talked about, they have that triumvirate. And that middle population that think of in the school, it's the teachers. They're halfway in, halfway out. They're not truly the employees that administer the system.
And then you have students that some of them are.
Students are consumers. So students are easy because they're consumers. You don't trust them with data. You don't trust them with shit. But the teachers, very much like faculty, very much like the government employees, especially the contractors for the government employees, they're always in that halfway in, halfway out. That they're very dangerous in terms of the information that they know, but they are not somebody you can enforce a policy on. And so it creates that middle ground that is the most ripe target for attack.
Yep.
And
Very hard to enforce.
very hard to enforce.
Training, limitations.
Big population.
big population, variety of device.
Variety of devices, variety of education levels. You have super tech savvy, and you have people that are like our parents. So this is kind of that creates it as that's the part that makes it so target rich. And when we think of the attacks that can come out of this,
and they are coming. We've seen
and they are coming.
Slew of
so
them.
we see this in the hospitals with the ransomware. And by the way, hospital has the worst populations because they have doctors who have huge egos, are complete assholes. I can speak with experience. I am one. And they always think that they know more than they know. Sounds familiar?
Plus, there's on the empathy side, super busy, want to treat the patients while having tons of paperwork to fill up. So the administrative work that they need to do, sitting on technology, is actually preventing them from doing the day-to-day. So they don't want to have, the additional layer of something that slows them down.
Yes, and they have all the sensitive data, the most sensitive data ever.
Yep.
Now that we've established how the population looks like, now let's think of what kind of attacks can be launched. So there's the traditional thing, there's the most common one, which we've seen in the Commonwealth here in Massachusetts recently happened. With
ransomware.
With Stewart, with Optum, with everybody. Everybody got hit by ransomware. So ransomware...
Pervasive these days, super pervasive, shuts down the operation for days, sometimes a month.
Yes. The other vector of attack, which nobody likes to talk about, but it's really, really there.
By the way, Stewart wasn't a ransomware. They just bankrupt.
No,
You're talking about Optum.
There's Optum.
United Health.
Look at the history of Stewart.
But Stewart probably
ransomware
as well.
Look at the...
they just got bankrupt.
They got bankrupt. They had multiple incidents of ransomware.
Everyone got...
Yes.
Yeah. But back to that.
Yes. But back to that, if you look at the other vectors of attack, everybody thinks of the big ones, but there's also tons of small ones. There's a lot of death by 1,000 cuts.
Oh yeah, every school district gets like few days of being shut down from the Google Drive or whatever, and
exactly.
Disruption to everyone.
And then there's always the little stealings. What do I mean, little stealings? Remember when I was talking about doctors? Doctors most of the time are contractors to the organization. Faculty are contractors. People hijack their accounts and reroute their paychecks. It's a very common thing right now that happens with almost all the contractors in cities, in doctors, in universities.
Really?
Yeah. So they pretend to be somebody that they call the call center, say, especially during holiday seasons, and say, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah.
Basically fraud.
Here's my new routing number. The basic fraud, it's super pervasive. It's super impactful. It costs tons of money. And the other one is that nobody thinks about is using this as a basis for attack. At least 3 of the biggest attacks that happened here recently used proxies that were hosted in schools. And why is that? Because if I want to pretend to be Lital, I hack Bowen, which will take me 3 minutes, and I put a proxy, and now all Lital's transactions appear as if they're coming from Newton. Super easy. And having proxies run through school systems is so easy. So easy, because we know how they're not well protected.
Yeah, the network is probably not well set, well configured. So that's, and then on the other side of the spectrum, there is nation states that are looking for IP, governmental contracts of universities, building stuff. They just therefore grab and steal. And there is also espionage that could be done. So maybe that's on the tougher to protect, but that's also happening day in, day out.
Yeah, the main thing is that there's a lot of things that can be done that nobody thinks that can be done, and I like that recommendation because one of the things they said, and I think this paper was primarily a shot across the bow to the 2 biggest vendors, to those customers, which both have big problems.
Microsoft and Google.
Microsoft and Google. because the productivity suites are usually the core of both identity and the storage of data. Both of them come...
And the apps used in those environments, the emails,
yeah, it's called that's the productivity suite. The email, docs, storage. That's productivity.
PowerPoint, whatever.
Exactly, that's productivity suites. And those, by design, are not secure. They're built in a way that you need to take a lot of steps to get them to be secured.
You need to apply things on top.
Yeah, and this is a good shout out to my friend Dana Wolf. And some of the companies, the company that they're trying to do is they're trying to do an easy way for you to set up a lot of those apps to be SSO'd, passwordless, and things like this. And this is where...
As embedded. Yeah, let's not get there yet.
But that's kind of where I think people need to think about. Sometimes it's you said they're cyber poor. They don't understand that they're too poor to be cheap.
So that is exactly what CISA is saying. They're saying if you're selling a product to those type of organizations, you need to have completely different mindset about how to secure your product and how to help those organizations. Those organizations, as we said, have probably very little talent and capabilities to hire security staff. IT may not be governed internally. It might be outsourced. It might be. It might not be. It might be, a volunteer helping, or somebody with no expertise whatsoever. So you need to understand that your product has to be secured by design and used by security illiterate people. And that needs to be the get-go. And those organizations should not be using tools that are not giving it. So
putting it
everything
on them, I think, is wrong. I think what they're trying to do is actually put the responsibility on Microsoft and Google, who are making a lot of money out of this space.
But there are also tons of small vendors creating software for those environments.
Even before you start with the small vendors, so and we can address the stupid billing systems that we have to have 50 billing systems and things like that. But here's a couple of things that if Microsoft and Google were forced to do the right way from day one, you're actually putting them in a better position. So if Microsoft and Google would be forced to go through a partner to sell to these guys, because they can't be set up securely, correctly.
So that's the problem, that they can't be set up securely and correctly from the default. That's what CISA said.
But that's not going to happen. But that's not going to happen.
So that's a problem. They recommend, if you read what they say, it's not you sell through a partner. That's not what they're saying. They're saying you, Mr. Vendor, have to have security as a default setup. It's not that an admin will go and set it up, turn it off.
That's not what I'm saying. So, for example, if Microsoft would go with a bundle with a Duo or a Beyond Identity, and that's specifically I'm choosing those, maybe their passwordless will actually work, because their passwordless doesn't work and will not work in the next 5 years, no matter what they'll say. Mm-hmm. Especially if you think of the fact that it needs to be deployed on Chromebooks, in schools and things like that. They need to go with an integrator that already has set up all these things the right way. They can call it something bullshit for education and sell it as a package.
That I agree. I mean, it needs to be that the education, healthcare, municipality package has the right bundle and is pre-configured with this bundle, because that's a problem. Like, configuring the bundle is by itself a nightmare. Who will do that?
That's the idea, to be pre-configured with the bundle, set up correctly. And I'll give you another example. Microsoft had their pants taken off in public by the fact that right now the package that is used, the license that is used by most of these companies, is the free tier and not the E3 or not the E5.
Yeah, sure.
And they don't send, for example, SSO logs.
Of course.
In those tiers. So you can't even track. We saw that risky users, for example, one of the most important features comes back with risk level hidden when you're not at the right level of licensing. So by default, they make you pay a lot more money for for your ability to secure yourself with their tool. What the government is trying to tell them is give these tiers bundles that are set up correctly, securely, with the right level of tiering from day one.
Tiering is always, that's the hall of shame of companies selling security only to the enterprise.
Correct.
Expensive tier. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tiering is another thing. That's wrong. Security is the basic
It's table stakes.
It's table stake. You don't sell software without providing it to any of your customers. That's terrible. Terrible. And if you look at the cost of the secured tier versus the basic tiers, it's sometimes 5 times.
Yep.
This should be unacceptable, really unacceptable. Well, a favorite topic these days, identity, is probably the table stake for actually solving the big problems of target-rich security pool.
Addressing, yes.
Yeah, because if you basically eliminate MFA, move to phish-resistant MFA as a vector, passwordless, those table stake stuff, you would remove, I think part of the problem is that the human attack surface, as we just described in those organizations, is enormous. So by far, it's not patching that is that much of an issue. I mean, it is an issue. Hospitals have all kinds of device, and this is, but if you think about schools, academia, it's mostly SaaS solutions these days, heavy use of the cloud. So basically, identity and access to the cloud will solve or at least simplify a lot of the issues. So that should be addressed first.
I'll give you another sense of why the identity element is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a SOC and you don't have...
Which we don't. They don't, by definition.
And they will not investigate risk.
Nobody will detect an alert that somebody is impersonating somebody.
You need
it's happening,
yes.
And nobody will know if it's true or not because, a kid gives his password to his roommate every other day.
Yes.
Oh my God, if you would need to investigate those incidents. Nobody can handle it.
But that's the idea of why you want to be able to use...
To not have the ability to give your friend, your roommate...
Because you can't give
your
them
account credentials.
It's like when my mom called me up to share a credential with her, and I said, I can't. It's
biometric bound.
It's biometric bound.
Take my finger and ship it from Boston.
Exactly. So I couldn't ship my finger. This is the thing. You need to be able to do these things biometrically bound.
Yep.
And the other thing that you need to think of is services for verification, like ID.me.
Well, I do think that roommates can still, when you get your roommate drunk, and you can use the that right.
If they're in the same room, it's less of a problem. The problem starts with the password that is somewhere else.
When in the frat house, everybody get drunk.
Or the fact that if you're a nurse and at the nurse station there's a sticky that says, here's the password for accessing this system, and it's still there. If you go to almost every hospital, you'll see that in the reception there's like a sticky that says, here's the password to Epic something.
Every clinic.
Exactly.
Every clinic.
And make it easy to give access. And that's the other vendor that's giving everybody headaches, Epic. It's an Epic fail, Epic disaster. It's the SAP for all the medical facilities. It's a disaster.
Yep.
Security wise. So this is kind of where they need to force them to partner. And I think something like this, when they come out and say, hey, here's our statement for secure by design, sign it up, it will actually allow them afterwards to apply more positive pressure on the bigger vendors to say, you know what? You have to solve this problem because you committed to doing this, and now we've investigated. Now you need to provide those. And I think at some point they'll also need to provide a recommended list and a non-recommended list.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So together with this, CISA created the CISA Pledge, which is for vendors, for software vendors to go see the recommended kind of implementation of guidelines into your build. And companies supposed to take the pledge, and if they take the pledge, they follow up, they will be on the recommended CISA Pledge list. I don't know if CISA would enforce kind of checking that, or it's just, you pledge and it's just a trust thing. I would love to have, I guess companies that are StateRAMP, FedRAMP, they have like actually ways of checking it. But it seems like there is kind of like at least whitelisting, at least by kind of like companies stepping up and pledging that they're following those guidelines. So that's positive too. And they're really, really good guidelines. I recommend for every vendor out there, every software company, go check those guidelines, build towards. If you're not ready today, for example, you don't have ways to report CVEs, go and build capabilities to do it. So that, when you have vulnerabilities, you can report it and have kind of clear transparency around it. So I think that's really, really good. And I'm excited about that. Again, we talked a lot about how the government is not doing the right thing about cyber. I think this specific agency is actually going the right direction with those kind of and it feels like giving guidelines and not actually enforcing stuff is the right way to go, even though the ones that are really, really big maybe need a carrot and a stick as well, because the carrot is already out there for them. There is no stick.
I think what happens in most of these cases, they know who their targets are. They come back with these recommendations. They say, hey, this is warning number 1. And then they'll come back and say, hey, here's who didn't follow recommendation number 1. And then they can say, you know what, now we're going to make it a regulation. Because if you make it a regulation without enough warning, all these companies have big lobbies. They'll push back. They'll waddle the regulation down. Mm-hmm. The regulation will end up being useless. Mm-hmm. Actually, in our next episode that we're going to talk about greenwashing, I'm going to talk about useless regulations that basically choke you and provide you with nothing besides a process that eliminates your ability to
bureaucracy on top of it.
So creating a regulation, my old boss used to say that when you're a senior manager, you need to think that you're building puzzles with oven mitts. This is where this government agency is. They're trying to build puzzles with oven mitts, sending out a nice guidance, seeing how it's accepted, basically having conversations with these leaders and saying, hey, these are our guidelines, these are our recommendations, we're not enforcing this. But if we see no movement in this towards this direction, we will turn into enforcement. This is a little bit of a negotiation tactic when you are a government agency, because you can say, hey, you know what, this is what we think. Then you can start you can open the door to that negotiation. So you need to think of this as slow, low movement.
I would recommend for officials in school systems, in city officials, in universities, to read this guideline. It's very simple to understand. I think many of you in those type of positions are vetting software day in, day out, and you just bring it in. For example, we just had a new communication tool implemented to better communicate between schools and school district and the parents. It's actually much better than what we used before. But I don't know if they considered anything about cybersecurity. I don't know about the tool. Actually, it's just a kind of like emailing system. So maybe it's whatever. But
It's never whatever.
Exactly. There's so many tools that are used, and most of them are being bought for maybe usability, and most cases not even usability. It's usually just for what's the cost per user that you can fit into the budget. You need to have cybersecurity in mind. Like school boards that approve all kinds of budget, have somebody ask, did you check the cybersecurity guidelines of this software? Like, did somebody vet?
Most likely
nobody did. And we know that school boards have no idea about that, and they approve all kinds of software buying.
Yep.
It is an issue. This will bite you. It will go back, and people in city councils, in elected officials should be aware of those things. So with that, anything to add?
Yes. If you've ever seen the movie Armageddon,
Yeah.
and or have heard that, I think it was Armstrong that said that. Both said that when they were going to the moon, they're sitting on a bomb with 400,000 parts that was assembled by the lowest bidder. So this is kind of, when you deal with a lot of these bodies, you need to think about it, that there is no thought, there is no process, and it was assembled by the lowest bidder. And that's kind of where we think we need to apply the pressure on the bigger groups.
Good. Well,
with that,
we're ending another episode of the
Go
Didi and Lital
passwordless.
Show. Go passwordless. Go phish resistance. Super important. Think about identities. That's the most vulnerable part. The Didi and Lital Show is a weekly podcast. Please rate and review us wherever you get it. Recommend it to your friends. If you like us and you want to be on the show, reach out to Didi or to myself on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to have you here. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
bye-bye.